Hello everyone. So I am not fishing today. It is 40 degrees and rainy. So yeah, so I'm not out. I figured I would do this little video because the other day I did take the kayak out and this happened. Not huge, but not too bad, I guess. Not huge at all. Well, of course, that one's off. There you go. It's a healthy little smallie. Thumped the tube. So that was the only fish that I caught that day. And it came on a tube. And there's tons of videos of me fishing a tube for smallies. There's a really good one. Go check that out if you want to see lots of fishing with the tube, lots of smallies, and you can kind of get some tips from that. And also, if you just want to see a million fish catches on a tube, it's from a couple years ago on the old boat. But so I figured I would talk about the tube because I use it a lot for smallmouth, especially. Works for largies too, but I really like it for smallmouth, and I haven't really talked about it a lot. So I'm going to give you the whole rundown: how to fish a tube, what tube I use, what weight, rod and reel setup, all that stuff, line, whatever, and give you the whole skinny on a tube, because a lot of people don't fish it anymore. It's an old school bait. People now think I'm going to use a Ned rig or whatever, and they kind of think of them as the same style bait, which they're really not. But they kind of are, I guess, but they're not. What makes a tube so much different is that it is a tube, hollow inside. What it does is give that bait a very different action. It more flutters when you pop it up off the bottom. It flutters slowly, as opposed to other baits that, they'll just hop and jump and whatever. And I think that's what makes it so great. So anyway, to start off with the tube, I use Zoom salty tubes exclusively, pretty much. Every once in a while I might get some other brand if it's on sale or whatever. But really, any tube can work. I mean, they're all pretty much the same, but I really like the Zoom salty tubes. They just seem to get bit, and I just like them more than the rest of them, just the way they're made. They're great. You can see this one's all chewed up. Colors: green pumpkin. Pretty much it. Maybe black and blue. But I usually just stick with that. I don't screw around with crazy colors. You guys know I have a website. I make baits. Amazing soft plastic baits. And I don't offer many colors because I only offer you the colors that you actually need. Unlike other bait companies that are just trying to make crazy colors to sell to you, I'm only selling you the colors that you actually need. So, and that's what I use. I don't use crazy colors. So pretty much green pumpkin all the time. And this is the 3.75 salty tube, pretty much that same size all the time. Alright, now let's talk about weights. This is a tube jig. This is like a cheap brand that I got off Amazon for like a 200 pack or something for like super cheap. That's why I'm using them. they work pretty good, especially for being so cheap. The other brands that I really like are the VMC ones. I really like, they have a 90-degree line tie instead of this style one. Those 90s, number one, they're smaller so they don't stick out of the tube as much, and number two, that 90 seems like it doesn't want to get snagged under cover so much. So I like those, but this thing actually doesn't seem too bad. So really, any tube jig head. Now, size, when I am fishing a tube, it is a finesse tactic. I'm fishing light line, spinning rod, which I'll get into all that in a little bit, but so that means lightweight. 1/8 ounce is probably the biggest I go. 1/8 ounce are 3/16 at the most. And usually I just stick around that 1/8. 1/8 seems to be the best for everything. No matter fishing it shallow, fishing it deeper, dragging it, popping it, just fishing cover, just pitching it into cover and stuff. Seems to work for everything, so I just kind of stick with the 1/8 ounce now. But every once in a while, maybe I'll switch to something else. 3/16 at the most. So yeah, there you go. I just say get you a 1/8 ounce, you're good. I mean, I would go all the way down to like 1/16 as well, but 1/8 always seems to be just the best for everything. Now, you just wet down that tube jig head. Wetting it down will help it get inside the tube a lot easier. Maybe. Uh-oh. My hands are... This is becoming fish porn. No. Alright. So, there you go. You just slide it in. Obviously that line keeper isn't going to be exposed. You just pop it out of the tube. Just push down around that line tie and it'll come out of the tube. Right now, obviously, it's really exposed because this tube has put in work. It's the only one I got. I don't know what happened to my soft plastic bag that had the tubes in it for some reason, so I need to find that. But yeah, anyway, that's all you do. Then you just tie it down. Alright, now when I'm fishing a tube, like I said, it's a finesse style bait to me. I'm fishing it slow, I'm dragging it along the bottom. What I really like to do is rock dams or rocky areas, drag that sucker. And you guys can see in the videos that I've made of it and stuff, it has a tendency, obviously, if you're dragging anything along rocks, to kind of get caught under rocks. But the great thing about the tube is it really doesn't get stuck under rocks a lot. All you gotta do is just pop that rod, and it'll usually just pop that tube out. And a lot of times, you get it stuck under the rocks, you pop that tube out, that's when you're gonna get a lot of bites, and big bites. Granted, just dragging it, you get bites. Hopping it along, you get bites, but you know, you get some of the most surprising, biggest smallmouth bites by getting it caught under those rocks, and then you just pop it out. Really, that's all I do, is I just like pop it out like that really hard with your line pretty tight, not like completely tight where your rod's bent down, but tight enough, and then you pop it out and it'll wiggle its way out and give you that cool erratic floating action that the tube gives you, which is the reason why I think they work so good. Alright, but yeah, I'm just dragging a tube most of the time. I don't do a lot of pops. Every once in a while I might, you know, kind of give it little humps, or little hops. But for the most part, I'm just dragging it along the bottom. Drag it, then let it sit, reel back down tight, drag it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And like I said, light line, because I'm considering this a finesse tactic. This is a thing that, like, number one, I'm going to say Smallies have better eyesight than largies. And they also like clearer water than largemouth. So light line is always a good thing for Smallies. You're going to get more bites and bigger bites from smallmouth on lighter tackle than you're going to for largies, just because I don't know what it is, but their eyesight is better. You can definitely tell that. And also the clear water thing. They like clear waters. You know, largemouth, they kind of don't really care what the water color is. They like that darker water to hide in. Smallmouth are more pack feeders, clear water. They like to just attack baits. They're little buttheads. I say it all the time. That's why they're so much fun to catch, because they're little buttheads. Even the small ones are fun to catch. Just because they're jerks, and they never give up, and they're little jerks. So, anyway, so that's why, you know, I fish a lot of light line tactics for smallies. And this is like my go-to one most of the time, depending on where I'm at or whatever. But for the most part, this is like a go-to bait for smallmouth. I always have one tied on. Just always need one. Alright, so like I said, I'm using a spinning rod, light line. Now, I do use this. Okay, let's talk about the rod and reel first. It does not really matter. This is a Bass X by St. Croix. I actually have a few of these now. I like these rods a lot for being pretty inexpensive. I don't remember exactly what they are, $100 or whatever. Pretty inexpensive, but they're really like my favorite spinning rods right now. I bought one a couple years ago, and now they're the ones that I like the most that I have. So, just 7'1", medium heavy. It's the perfect rod for this. Or not medium heavy, sorry, medium, medium heavy, medium spinning rod, and it's just perfect for this. You don't need a big heavy rod for this, obviously, because you're using light line and all that, and also to get this tube out there or whatever, you don't need a heavy rod. Hook set's not crazy. It's just more of like a sweeping, just pull into them. They usually just engulf that tube completely, and you just sweep into them and get good hook sets in them. I don't really, if a fish bites it, they're getting a hook. It's pretty nice. That's another thing I love about this tube. So, but that's the rod that I use. The reel, this is a Pflueger President. I love these reels. Pflueger casting stuff, not great. The Pflueger President spinning reel is like the best spinning reel for the money you can buy. They're super cheap, like $50. Super light. I like them a lot. Just started using them after trying so many more expensive ones and cheaper ones and whatever. I always had a problem with spinning reels. I never liked them. This thing is just so smooth and great. I have 3 of them now on these same rods. That's all my spinning setups are now this Bass X St. Croix and that Pflueger President. So super cheap gear. Don't need anything crazy. Just use your standard spinning gear that you got. Now, line. I will talk about the line here. Hold on. Let me pull a little bit of line out. Alright, just so I can hold it. Now, on a spinning rod, I always use braid. It is spooled up with braid. Always. 10 to 15 pound braid on a spinning rod. It casts better. You can see your line on top of the water, so you can detect those really light bites. It's just the way to go. You need to be using braid on a spinning reel. I have talked about it so many times. It is the best thing you can do. Just like I said, casting's better. You can see that line too a lot better. It does not get caught up on the spinning reel. You know, you got fluorocarbon on the spinning reel. It's a pain in the butt a lot of times. I'm constantly seeing guys trying to get those knots out of their reel. Never will you ever have that problem with braid. So 10 to 15 pound braid on here, on all my spinning setups. That's it. Alright, this is actually 15. I kind of like to go a little bit heavier with that because I'm not worried about the visibility of this either, because then I tie on a leader. But so 15, I usually just go with that, stick with that. It's perfect. It's great. Now let's talk about leader. Alright, this is 10 pound fluorocarbon. I usually go with 10 pound fluorocarbon. 10 to 6 for my light line tactics. Any higher than 10, like if you're going up to 12-pound fluorocarbon, there's no reason to. That's like for a casting rod. 10-pound fluorocarbon might go down to 6. Water is super clear. I feel like the tube, because it is kind of a little heavier and kind of a bigger bait, kind of more of a stout hook, that 6 is a little too light for this tactic, so I normally just stick with 10. Usually for most of my finesse stuff, I stick with 10. If I absolutely have to, I might go down to 8 or 6, but I try to stick with 10. It's invisible, it's fluorocarbon, that's great. So, and I don't have to worry about the craziness of super light line that gets so annoying. And I usually just keep like a 3 to 5 foot leader on it. I usually start with about 5 foot, and then if you got to retie it, especially fishing around those rocks, you know you're gonna get stuck a little bit, whatever, or just rubbing along those rocks as you're dragging it, you know you're gonna kind of start to fray your fluorocarbon a little bit. So retying every once in a while is always recommended. So starting with 5, get it down to 3 at the most, 3 to 2 feet at the most, and then retie on your leader. But 5 should last you all day, no problem, and then more days probably. So that's what I do. Now with the knot, I've talked about this knot. Go and check that video out. I'm not gonna go over it again. All the knots that I use for every single type of line and whatever, there you go, that's my knot right there. I talked about how this knot has never given me problems, and it's plenty, and it's super easy to tie. It takes me 2 seconds, as opposed to these crazy knots that people tie their leaders with, which is insane. No one's got time for that crap. So that's the whole setup, and that's pretty much it. I like to fish this around rocks, around sticks and stuff. It will like to get caught up around sticks, those laydowns, but kind of depending. And also, like I said, they're usually really easy to pop free. Another trick that I like to do. You're noisy. Another trick I like to do if you do get stuck is then you pull it down really tight so the rod is bowed down with it, and then just flip your bail. It's a great way to get baits popped out when they're stuck. Especially this tube really gets unstuck pretty regularly doing that. It's a great way with the spinning rod and reel. I don't know, I've learned it from someone, I don't remember who, but it works. You just tighten your line, get that bow in your line, and then just flip your bail up and hit the roof. Flip your bail up and it'll pop that thing out. So that's another great way. But usually they're not that bad to get out, depending obviously on the cover. If you get this hook straight into a stick, which can happen, it's an exposed hook, and that's a different story. You might have to go over there and pop it out. But for the most part, you should never really lose a tube, unless if you're not checking your line and your line breaks. So that's it. Oh, hook set on it. It's okay. Well, the bite, number one. A lot of people don't even notice when they get a bite. Now, sometimes they will thump the crap out of this thing. That fish that I showed you at the beginning of this video, he thumped the crap out of it, so obviously you got a bite. But a lot of times, you'll just see your line just pull tight, maybe start to move a little bit. You got to keep your eyes on your line and pay attention to that line. It's just like any other finesse tactic. Just watch your line, it'll go tight, maybe move a little bit, and then really all I do is reel down, make sure it's tight. If it's already tight, then you don't really need to reel down, and just sweep into them. A sturdy hook set, but not like, you know, not a jig hook set, not like a flippin' rip their face off hook set, or a top water rip their face off hook set. Just a good reel down and then just a good pull. You got him. Like I said, this thing hooks them so good. I don't lose fish after they're hooked. It just works. So that's it. That's everything about a tube. Go and fish a tube. It's a long lost bait, and maybe I shouldn't be telling you guys this because, you know, I take it out there and I slay them with the tube, and no one else really throws them anymore except old guys that are like, I used to throw a tube back in the 70s, you know, whatever. So, but I gave up the juice. So, go get you some tubes and throw them, and catch you some smallies and largies too. Actually, I've caught some good largies on tubes, but fishing for smallies, there's happen to be largies around too. But I'm usually just fishing it for largies if I'm fishing it. So, or for smallies if I'm fishing it. So, anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow.